Dark Souls and Bloodborne developer From Software has announced a new game called Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. You'll notice that title features neither the word Souls nor the word Born. What the hell, guys? Yes, much to the surprise of everyone who's played the previous From Software games referred to as Soulsborne games, Sekiro looks like a genuine departure from the now well-worn structure of collecting a ton of souls or blood echoes and then dying clumsily and losing all your progress. Sekiro is a very different prospect indeed. There's no character customization, no weapons builds, and no online multiplayer. Single player, single class, single character. Single tier rolling down the face of hardcore Dark Souls fans. But worry not, you guys, there are still some common themes and From Software specialities that mean Dark Souls fans should enjoy Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Here are 6 reasons Dark Souls fans shouldn't be worrying. One of the great joys of the original Dark Souls is the fact that Lordran is a single contiguous world. And there I was thinking I wouldn't get the chance to use today's word of the day, contiguous, off my word of the day calendar. The sense of Lordran being a convincing physical location is reinforced when you unlock a shortcut and arrive at a part of the world you've already visited that you thought was miles away. We've been specifically promised that the world of Sekiro will be similar to that of Dark Souls 1, so we're expecting another vast game world that we can slowly crack open like a delicious Easter egg. In this case, the world is inspired by 16th century Japan rather than the European medieval fantasy of Dark Souls, and you're a ninja looking after a young lord, rather than a wrinkly walking corpse in plate armour. Seriously buddy, ever heard of moisturiser? It would work wonders on that. We don't need to tell you that death is a key gameplay mechanic in Dark Souls, I'm sure you're acutely aware. Yeah, I know, game. Death doesn't work the same way in Sekiro. For a start, there are actual checkpoints in this game that allow you to continue your progress from where you died. Filthy casuals rejoice. But just like Dark Souls, death is key to the gameplay in Sekiro, just in a slightly different way. When you die in this game, you'll sometimes have the option to resurrect there on the spot and sneak up on your killers as they're wandering away patting themselves on the back. We say sometimes because the developer is still apparently tuning the system, but currently it seems like the Shadows Die Twice subtitle might actually be literal, as in you get one death and then one chance to resurrect before being killed and booted back to the last checkpoint. However, there may be ways to increase that as you explore the game. From what we can tell though, Sekiro will have a similar one last chance vibe to that of retrieving your souls in Dark Souls or your blood echoes in Bloodborne. I really should stop leaving those things lying around. You know, by being less bad at this game. Just because Sekiro is set in 16th century Japan doesn't mean it slavishly sticks to historical fact. I mean, I don't recall reading about 16th century Japan having an infestation of giant centipedes. Which is good because you wouldn't believe how hard it was to get a can of Raid back then. Much like Dark Souls, you'll be facing off against terrifying bosses, both of the horrible monster and oversized human flavours. Clearly on the same crash weight gain diet as Ornstein and Smaug. Because this is about dueling though, it's about gradually reducing your opponent's posture to open them up for a fatal blow. That posture is everything to do with maintaining your fighting stance and nothing to do with walking around with a book on your head at a fancy finishing school. Unlike in Souls games, you'll also find your swords clash with your enemies now, so it's less about getting the first few hits in and rolling out of the way, and more about using excellent swordsmanship and properly creating an opening to strike. How that works against a giant centipede, we're still not clear on. I guess just as long as he doesn't have 100 swords. If all that sounds a bit alarming to you, a Dark Souls fan with many hours of hard-earned muscle memory, then don't worry, timing is still going to be a key part of combat in Sekiro. For a start, that posture system we mentioned involves timing. Every time you or an enemy blocks a strike, your posture drops. If your posture falls to 0, you're vulnerable to a fatal attack. If you can perform a perfectly timed block though, you won't lose any posture and your enemy will lose some instead. It's that back and forth that's going to be crucial to your success in duels. Basically, if you pride yourself on being able to parry every enemy in Dark Souls, you're going to have plenty of fun mastering the blocking system in Sekiro. And if you mistime it every time, well, you and me both. One of our favourite things about Soulsborne games is the huge scale of the worlds you're exploring. Both Dark Souls and Bloodborne having dizzyingly tall buildings that loom over you, making you feel tiny and insignificant. Sekiro might be inspired by a real period in Japanese history rather than boasting its own unique fantasy setting and architecture, but it's promised the game will have similar towering structures to the ones we're used to in Lordran or Yharnam. The difference here, of course, is the inclusion of a Tenchu style grappling hook built into your prosthetic arm, allowing you to zip up to higher ground when you see fit. It's not just navigating the world that the grapple will help you with, you'll also be able to deploy it during combat to put yourself in a more advantageous position. That position being not on the end of your opponent's puke-covered sword. You know, I think I'd be put off by the smell more than anything else. Finally, and this is probably the most important one for the Dark Souls hardcore, Sekiro is still going to be a difficult game. More difficult in fact, now that there's a resurrection mechanic. According to Hidetaka Miyazaki, adding the ability to resurrect means they can tune the combat to be even more challenging than before. What's more, with less emphasis on the RPG elements, such as levelling up weapons, than in the Dark Souls games, we're unlikely to see another situation where someone can cruise through the early part of the game with a massively overpowered Drake sword, for example. Look, I only used it for 5, maybe 6 hours, okay? So yes, if you're a card-carrying member of the Git Good Brigade, then there's no need to worry. Sekiro will give you plenty of opportunities to solemnly shake your head at people's complaints that the game is difficult. It seems like maybe in my case it should be called Sekiro Shadows Die lots of times. Almost constantly, in fact. There you have it, 6 reasons this new direction for From Software isn't such a dramatic departure after all. Does Sekiro Shadows Die Twice pique your interest? Does it include your favourite element of Dark Souls? Let us know in the comments and like and subscribe for plenty more on the game as we have it. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.